It is early October, and a blue jay is moving through the upper canopy of a suburban neighborhood in Virginia, flying a patrol circuit that covers several miles of streets and yards and woodland edges. It has been flying this same circuit for 3 years, since it was old enough to establish its own territory after dispersing from the area where it was born. Most of what it flies over on any given morning barely registers: lawns, ornamental shrubs, rooftops, the occasional garden bed. But then something different appears below, and the bird drops out of the canopy with a purposefulness that it reserves for almost nothing else. It lands on a low branch of an oak tree at the back corner of a yard, and before the leaves of that branch have stopped trembling from the impact, the bird is already assessing. Not the tree as a whole, not the yard around it, the acorns. This is not a casual visit. The bird is here because it detected this tree from above, identified it as a productive acorn source through a combination of visual and spatial memory that includes where it has found acorns before in this neighborhood, and made the decision to invest time in it. Over the next 3 hours, this bird will make dozens of trips from this tree to cache sites distributed across its territory, and each trip will carry more than one acorn, because this bird has an anatomical feature specifically designed to make these trips efficient. The structure is called the gular pouch, an elastic, expandable sac in the throat, just below the bill, that allows the bird to compress multiple acorns against each other and hold them there while carrying additional acorns in the bill at the same time. A well-loaded blue jay leaving an oak in peak caching season is carrying 5 or more acorns per trip. It makes dozens of these trips in a single afternoon. Across the entire autumn caching season, a single bird moves thousands of acorns from the trees that produce them to the soil that will either hold them in cache until winter, or, when the bird forgets where they are buried, allow them to germinate come spring. The gular pouch is not incidental anatomy. It is the specialized physical equipment of an animal that has been shaped by millions of years of partnership with a specific kind of tree. That partnership is what makes the oak the one tree every blue jay searches for first, and its depth goes far beyond the obvious. Ornithologists and ecologists studying the recovery of North American forests following the last glacial period, roughly 10 to 12,000 years ago, have documented something that initially seems almost improbable. Oak trees expanded northward and westward across the continent far faster than their heavy, low-dispersing seeds could have traveled on their own. Acorns do not have wings. They are not carried by wind. A mature oak drops its acorns directly beneath its own canopy, where competing with the parent tree for light and soil nutrients makes the odds of successful establishment dramatically lower than they would be in open ground further away. Unaided, oak forests would spread slowly, limited by the physics of gravity and the density of their own shade. Blue jays solve this problem by flying acorns sometimes a mile or more from the parent tree, burying them in open soil at the edges of clearings and along the margins of other habitats, and then forgetting a meaningful percentage of what they buried. They functioned as living seed dispersal engines of extraordinary efficiency. The forests of the eastern United States, the oak woodlands that define so much of the region's ecology, and that have provided habitat for countless species across thousands of years, are not simply where oak trees happen to grow. They are, in a significant and documentable sense, the legacy of generations of blue jays doing what the bird in the Virginia yard is doing right now. Every acorn that gets buried and forgotten is a potential tree. Every potential tree is a fragment of future forest. And every blue jay that caches aggressively in autumn is, without any awareness of the ecological consequence, participating in one of the most consequential acts of habitat creation in the continent's natural history. The scale of this contribution is worth sitting with for a moment, because it fundamentally changes how you see the bird. A single blue jay in a single autumn season may cache upward of 4,000 acorns. A local population of blue jays operating across a few square miles of habitat moves a volume of acorns that no other dispersal mechanism could match. The buried acorns that germinate and survive to become trees do so at the locations and depths the bird selected, which tend to favor open soil with good drainage, relatively low competition from existing vegetation, and depth shallow enough for the seedling's first root to reach stable ground. These are not random placements. They are the product of a bird making individual decisions at each cache site based on soil texture, moisture, and surface characteristics, decisions that favor germination, without the bird having any awareness that germination is the outcome. The partnership between the blue jay and the oak tree is one of the most elegant examples of mutualism in temperate ecology, and it has been operating on this continent for far longer than any human observation of it. The acorns themselves are assessed before they go into the pouch. This is the part most people never see because it happens quickly, but it is happening every time, and understanding it changes how you read a blue jay's behavior at an acorn source. The bird picks up an acorn and holds it crosswise in its bill, then makes a small lateral shaking motion. What it is measuring is the relationship between the weight of the shell and the weight of the kernel inside. A dense, well-developed acorn feels different in the bill than a light, hollow, or shriveled one, and the bird uses this haptic information to make a triage decision about whether the acorn is worth carrying to a cache. Heavy, dense acorns go into the pouch. Light ones get dropped. The bird is curating its winter food supply with a quality control process that has been refined across evolutionary time to maximize the caloric return on every caching investment. This assessment behavior is part of why the oak functions as an anchor in blue jay territory, in a way that no ornamental planting ever replicates. The bird is not just finding food at the oak. It is performing a behavioral sequence that is as fundamental to its winter survival strategy as any other activity in its annual cycle. An oak that produces reliably year after year is a resource worth mapping into core territory, worth returning to every autumn, worth orienting the rest of the territorial circuit around. The bird that finds a productive oak in your yard does not simply file it as a useful stopping point. It incorporates the tree into the structural center of its seasonal world. The canopy of that same oak serves a second purpose that extends the tree's value beyond the caching season. Blue jays nest in trees, preferring sites between 10 and 25 feet above the ground, in branches that offer both structural support and enough leaf density to conceal the nest from aerial predators. Cooper's hawks, which actively hunt blue jays and are capable of pursuing them through dense vegetation with considerable agility, are among the most significant predation pressures on corvids in eastern North American suburbs. A dense, mature oak canopy offers protection from this threat that open spaces and ornamental plantings cannot provide. A pair of blue jays that finds both an excellent acorn source and suitable nesting cover in the same tree or in closely adjacent trees has found something rare in a typical suburban landscape, a place where the most basic requirements of food security and reproductive safety are both met. In most American suburbs, these two requirements are almost never co-located. A yard might have a feeder that provides food, but no tall canopy near it for cover. Another yard might have a mature tree, but nothing worth caching under it. The rarity of the combination is part of what makes it so powerful when it does occur, because the bird has solved two problems simultaneously in one location, and the behavioral investment that follows reflects the biological significance of that solution. That discovery does not produce casual visits. It produces territorial commitment, and territorial commitment from a corvid that lives 7 to 10 years in the wild, and whose offspring establish nearby territories and inherit the knowledge of local food sources, produces the kind of multi-generational use of a single property that can persist for decades. Now, the practical reality of oak trees is that they take time. A sapling planted today will not produce meaningful acorn yields for years and will not provide mature nesting canopy for considerably longer. This is not a reason to abandon the idea of planting one. An oak planted today is one of the most ecologically significant investments a homeowner can make, not just for blue jays, but for the hundreds of other species that depend on oak trees across their lifespan. And the tree that seems small and unimpressive today becomes the anchor of a functional habitat system over the arc of a decade or two. But for homeowners who want to begin building blue jay habitat on a faster timeline, there are native plants that operate on a more accessible scale, and address different but equally important points in the blue jay's annual nutritional calendar. Flowering dogwood bridges the gap between the autumn caching season and the deep winter months, producing clusters of bright red berries that are unusually high in fat content relative to other native fruits. Blue jays consuming dogwood berries in September and October are building the lipid reserves they will draw on overnight when temperatures fall below freezing, and the bird's body must maintain its core temperature without the benefit of foraging or activity to generate heat. A dogwood that reaches berry production within a few years of planting provides this resource reliably, every autumn, at exactly the seasonal moment when the bird most needs it. American holly takes over from the dogwood through January and February, holding its berries on the branch through the coldest weeks of winter, when everything else in the landscape has been stripped bare. A holly that is visible from above with clusters of red fruit against snow-covered branches in late January is not just attractive, it is one of the most conspicuous food signals in the entire winter landscape, and a blue jay that has this shrub on its territorial map returns to it with urgency, precisely because the alternatives have run out. In spring, when the nesting season arrives and the nutritional demands of raising chicks shift the adult bird's diet almost entirely to animal protein, native flowering plants fill the ecological role that oaks and berry shrubs cannot. Caterpillars, beetles, and soft-bodied arthropods are what nesting blue jays hunt to feed their developing young, and the native insect communities that support these prey species are found almost exclusively on native plant species. Thick-stemmed native sunflowers support a dense and diverse community of native caterpillars and beetles throughout the growing season, functioning as what is effectively a living protein source for the nesting territory around them. The sunflower does not feed the blue jay. It feeds the caterpillar that the blue jay feeds to the chick, and that chain is what makes nesting success possible in yards that include native flowering plants, and near impossible in yards built entirely from ornamental species that support little native insect life. The bird in the Virginia yard will continue working the oak for the rest of the morning. It will cache several dozen acorns before moving on to other stops on its territorial circuit. It will return tomorrow and the day after, and every autumn for as long as this tree produces what the bird needs. The yard does not need to do anything other than leave the tree standing, and the space around it reasonably undisturbed. The ecological conversation between the jay and the oak has been going on longer than any human management strategy has existed, and it will continue as long as both parties in the partnership are present. Give them both a place in your yard, and the rest of the work happens without you. If you want to explore what the practical timeline of building this kind of habitat looks like, or which native species are most appropriate for your specific region, let us know in the comments and we will cover it next. And if watching a blue jay work an oak tree means something new to you after seeing this, give the video a like and subscribe, because there is a great deal more of this coming.